Hello everybody and welcome to Covey Woodworks. I'm Stuart Covey, and in this video I'm going to show you how I design an inlay in VCarve Pro 7.5. In my last video I showed you how I made a inlaid flower clock on the router, but I didn't show you any design process behind it. So in this video I'm going to show you that design. So I'm going to make a 10-inch clock. So I'm going to set my job size as 12 by 12, and it's going to be 3/4 inch thick. And we're going to set my our start position in the left lower hand corner and click OK. I'm going to be doing all my measurements in inches. So we have a 12-inch workpiece here, and I'm going to make a 10-inch clock. So let's first create the outer edge circle. So we're going to start right in the middle of our workpiece. We're going to have it set at X6 and Y6. And we're going to make it a 10-inch diameter circle. Okay, so there's the outer edge of our clock. Now we're going to create another circle. This is going to be for the clock mechanism to go through. That's going to be, we're going to make that 0.3 inches in diameter. That's going to again be directly in the middle. Now, okay, so now we'll close that. So now we're going to get our flower design in here. I have, let's see if I can get it here. I downloaded a clip art image of a flower and a stem, just like this. Then I'm going to upload into VCarve Pro, and I'm going to trace it. That's how I'll get those, the vector lines for that image. So we're going to go up here and import bitmap. So it'll import it in here. Let's change that size. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and trace this. By doing that, we're going to click over here on the trace bitmap icon. And we're going to move the slider until you get everything you want. So you're right at the max, you have everything, but we're only going to want the flower, and we're not going to want any of these little dots around out here, because it'll copy those. And we don't want the logo in there either. So we're going to select this just until we like how it's looking. That's about good. And then we're going to do a loose fit. That'll make sure we have a nice rounded edges. And the same with the noise filter. We're going to have that up a little bit. Okay, we're going to preview that. You can see that all looks good. There's no jagged edges, nice and smooth. So I'm going to do apply, close. Okay, so now we can delete the bitmap, and we have our traced vector lines. And I'm not going to use these two outer ones, so we're going to delete both of those. And let's make this a little bigger. Okay, now I'm going to go and spread this out for effect. I want to go and spread these out a little bit, just to give it a little slightly better look. I like it how it's like that. Okay, so it looks about good. Now we're gonna go in and group these so they won't move. And I'm going to twist it a little bit. I'm going to be having some circles around here for each for the 4 main points, the top, both sides, and the bottom. So I want to make sure the flower's not going to get in the way with that. So I'm going to resize this again. I want to keep the bitmap, the flower, somewhat evenly spaced in the clock. So I'm adjusting the size so it'll be evenly spaced. There won't be a lot of stem on the bottom, just a little bit of flower on the top. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm going to group these back together. I'm going to make these slightly larger. Okay. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to create an outer ring around this edge. So I'll go back to the circles. We're going to make this. I'm going to go and do this one by hand. So we'll make sure it gets started in the middle. I'm going to say about there. Now we're going to create a second circle. Alright, that looks good. Okay, so now both these circles here are going to be the strip of wood around the outer edge. And then this outer circle here is going to be the outer edge. That will be the profile of the clock. Okay, so now that we have that done, we're going to go in and create our dots around the outer edge. Let's go back to circle. We're going to create circle. Let's draw one here. About that big. Okay, now we're going to want this nice and centered, so we're going to click it. You can see the line up above, this little line right here that moves back and forth with the cursor. We can use that to make sure we have it right on center at 6. So that's right on 6. I'll go ahead and copy and paste this and put it down at the bottom. Make sure you have the space between both of these fairly even. Okay, now copy and paste this. We're just going to rotate this around until it's nice and even. Let's go ahead and make sure that's fairly even around there. You can check. It's right about at 6. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Okay, so that looks pretty good. The flower's looking a little close to this top dot, so we're going to size this down a little bit. I'm going to rotate this a little more. Okay, now we're going to make the small circles. Okay. Make some little circles. About that size. Okay, now we're going to get these centered, we're going to go to get a line. Start right at 6. Go straight across. And we can also see our circle right here is a little off-centered, so we'll bring that down. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to take this. We're going to the center circle. We're going to copy and paste this and rotate it until it's right in the middle of that small circle we have. Then we're going to zoom in on the center, and the reason I copied the second center circle with this is so I can line it up and group these together. So see, now I know that's slightly up. We want to make sure we keep that in the center. So there we go. Now it's back in the center. Okay, so we're going to create another circle. Start right in the middle. And we're going to put it right in the middle of those big circles. Okay. This top circle needs to come down a little bit. There we go. Now we're going to have everything even on this circle here. We'll delete that later. So this circle here, go ahead and move it over so it's centered with that. Okay, so now let's copy this circle, paste it. We'll drag that down here. That's pretty centered. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this. Okay, we have a slight problem here. This circle is not quite even. This line looks like it needs to come down a little bit. That's better. Okay. This needs to move slightly. Make that back in the center. We want everything to be even, so we're doing all these extra circles and stuff to make sure everything ends up the same. We want these outer circles around here to be all the same. So let's go in and make these centered again. So we moved that line. There we go. Okay. Okay, so now we have that done. We're going to go ahead and cut out these outside lines. Delete those. We don't need those anymore. And we don't need this line here either. Okay. So now we're going to take this and we're going to group it with one of these inner circles, the line, and both these outer circles. I'm going to group those together. Now we're going to copy and paste those and just rotate it right about where it looks even. It looks pretty even there. Okay, so now we're going to go in and measure this to make sure it's still even. So we're going to measure from about the middle of this circle to the middle of this circle. See, that's 1.94 inches. So let's measure from here, next two middle circles. That's 2.06, so that's a little off. And then back to what looks like the middle of this circle. 2.12. Okay, so this one needs to be rotated a little bit. This one needs to be rotated just a little bit. Okay, now let's remeasure these. Center to center, 1.97. Center to center, 2.12. Yep. And 2.03. Okay, so this one needs to be moved up just a little bit more. Let's try this again. 2.03. 2.06, that's pretty close. Okay, so that's good there. Now we're going to take these, copy both of these. We're going to copy and paste both of these and rotate them down to where they're even with the other two sides. Okay, now let's go in and measure these. Okay, so that's 2.06. Now let's try this one down here. That's 1.98. Okay, so this needs to be moved to the left a little bit. Okay, so let's try that again. 0.4. And 2.0. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so now we have our smaller circles. Now we can ungroup all these. Let's go to select all these and ungroup back onto the original layers. And now we can delete all of these lines because we don't need them anymore. So let's do that a better way. We want to get all of those, but we want to leave one circle here, so we're going to deselect. That was a line. One circle. There we go. Now we deselect in one circle. So now we still have our circle left there. And we can get rid of this. And there we go. Now we have all our circles. They're evenly spaced. Our flower. Make sure it still looks good and centered. So, there it is. Now we're ready to generate the toolpaths. Save this. Okay. So now we're ready to generate the toolpaths. So first we're going to start with the base of the clock, the main part of the clock. That is going to be all these inner circles routed out. So these are going to be the female inlay parts. So we're going to select all of those, get rid of this outer edge and the inner circle. And we're going to go into toolpaths, and we're going to go into inlay, the inlaid toolpaths, the little eye, blue eye. And this is going to be the female part. So we're going to do this bottom section, and we want a pocket, not a hole. So I'm going to click on that. And our depth is going to be 0.06 inches. Let me think, is that correct? Let's go ahead and make that 0.1 inches. Yeah, let's make that 0.1 inches. Okay, and now we're going to select our bit. We want a 1/16 inch bit. And one thing that's important here is when we create the toolpaths for the male and the female parts of the inlay, they both have to be using the same bit, or else the proportions will be wrong. So we're going to select the flute 16 inch. We want to make sure we use that same bit when we do the male parts. Okay, so we have our depth. Actually, we're going to switch that back to 0.8. And we're going to use a larger clearance tool. We're going to use an 1/8 inch flute bit for that. And we want a raster type pattern going from left to right, because that's going to be the grain direction. Alright, so that looks good. So we're going to do calculate. And then we have this. So this is going to be the female pocket parts. Let's go ahead and preview this. Alright, so there we go. Now we have the pocket. And now we're ready to do the male inlay parts. Well, actually, let's go in and do let's do the male inlay parts now. Okay, so we're going to ungroup this. Back onto original. And I'm going to want to do these with different woods. So I've got to plan which ones I want with different woods. So the flowers are all going to be one color, one type of wood. Like in my previous project, I did that as cedar. So we're going to just select the flower, and we're going to go back to Inlay toolpath, and we're going to do straight male insert inlay. So we're not going to do the stepped one, we're going to do the straight one. Okay, cut depth. I'm going to be doing 1/4 inch wood, so I want just over that. Again, we want the flute 16th inch bit. And that's 2 passes, so that's good. We want the outside of the vector lines. And we're not going to have any toolpaths for this since it's going to be such a small bit. No tabs. Okay, so it looks good. Calculate this. And let's reset this. Okay, so that looks good. That'll cut around the outside. Now we want the stem. The stem's going to also be another color. That's going to be out of sweet gum wood. So we're going to do the same thing with this. Straight 16th inch bit, 2 passes. Okay, that all looks good outside. Calculate that. Alright, so that's looking good. Now I'm going to do this outer circle. Make sure we select both lines there. This is also going to be out of sweet gum. but I want to go in and put it on a separate toolpath so I can do it when I want to do it, and it won't cut that at the same time it cuts the stem. I want those to cut separately. So let's do the same thing. Make sure everything's the same. Okay. Alright. Now, these circles, I don't want them all spread out like this when they get cut. So I'm going to go in and move them all down right in here before I calculate them. Putting them all down this corner so I can use a little piece of wood and get them all out of it. I don't worry about the grain matching with these little dots. Okay, so I'm going to do the 4 larger circles out of sweet gum and the 8 smaller circles out of oak. So I'm going to calculate these separately. I'm going to calculate these circles. Okay. I'm going to go back to here. We're going to undo those. Move those all back. Okay. So I'm going to deselect these. Okay, so now let's do the small circles. Oh, don't need that one. Okay. So now select all these. All right. Okay, so now we're going to do the outer circle. I'm going to use a, so we're going to do the profile toolpath on this. And, alright, let's go and make sure this goes back first of all. Okay, now let's do the profile. Okay, so profile toolpath. This is 3/4 inch wood, so we're going to do just over 3/4 inch, so 0.753. Make sure it gets all the way through. And we're going to use a 1/2 inch downcut spiral bit on this. Select that. 3 passes. We want to make sure we're going around the outside of the vector line. And we're going to add some toolpaths to this. We don't want that 1/2 inch bit to fly this clock across the room. So I'm going to put a couple around here. Okay. I'm going to make these 0.2 by 0.2. Make sure they're not 3D because that makes them a point, makes them weaker. Make sure everything's still good and calculate. Okay. So let's go ahead and preview this one. The profile, we don't want to do any of the inlay pieces. Just do both of these. Okay. So we're going to view this, make sure everything works. Okay, looks like we missed one here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, on the profile. Alright, so that all looks like it came out good. And that's pretty much it. One thing I forgot to do is we've got to cut out this smaller hole. And I cut that with an 1/8 inch bit. Just going to use a profile toolpath on the inside. Select an 1/8 inch flute bit. We're going to cut out a pocket. I'll show you what we do for that after this. But we're going to cut out a pocket on the back, a square for the clock mechanism to fit in. So that's going to cut this down to about an 1/8 inch thick right in this center part of the clock. So we only need this to cut about an 1/8 inch. So we're just going to go in 0.25, 1/4 inch. Make sure it gets all the way through. But so we need to make sure we don't have that go all the way down. It's unnecessary. So one pass is good on the inside. No tabs. Okay, so let's calculate that. All right, so that looks good. Okay, so we have the front of the clock done along with all the inlays. So I'm just going to make sure we save this. Now let's go ahead and now you can save these toolpaths however you wish. Make sure I saved all of these separately. So basically all of these are separate, and just named them differently so I knew what they were. I knew this one was a stem, this one was a flower, etc. So then I know what wood to put the toolpath to. So we did all of that, and that's basically it. But now I just want to show you quickly what I did on the back, because we're going to want to route out a square for the clock mechanism to fit in. So let me get that here. I already have it designed. Okay, back. So basically I just created a square that is, I'm trying to remember how thick this is. Just over 2 inches, almost about 2.5 inches. Just enough for the clock mechanism to fit in. Plus a little, about 1/8 inch gap around this outer edge to allow, in case the hole is slightly off center, it'll still fit the mechanism, the clock mechanism. So we're going to create a toolpath for this. This is going to be a pocket. And we're going to cut this just about how thick, just a little deeper than how thick the clock mechanism is. The clock mechanism is about just over a 1/2 inch, so about 0.55. So I'm making this say 0.62 about. We also want to make sure we don't get the front of the clock too thin, but we also don't want the clock mechanism to stick out at all. Just going to do that. We're going to down cut spiral 1/2 inch bit. Raster. Okay. That all looks good. Let's calculate this. And we'll just go and preview this. Okay, so there we have it. This will be on the back of the clock. So what we'll do is we'll route this out first, and then we'll flip it over, make sure the our job piece is in the same spot as it was when we routed this out. We want to make sure when we flip it over, we want to make sure the board's in the exact same spot, so this will be centered. If not, the hole will be off-centered on here, and the clock mechanism won't fit. So we'll just want to be careful when we flip this over, it'll be in the same spot. And that's pretty much it. Let's go back to our previous clock. If I can find it here. Alright, there we go. So, that is how I do an inlay clock. I've heard that the version before this, 7.5 VCarve Pro, did not have this inlay toolpath feature, so it was harder to make those inlays because of all the little details that you have to account for. Because your bit's gonna fit around the outside of the male piece, around this tip, but it's not gonna fit all the way up in there on the inside for the female piece. So that's not gonna fit. So this inlay toolpath automatically accounts, so it'll automatically round off this tip here for the bit to fit in, and then it'll round it off on the male piece, so it'll make sure it fits in there. So I've heard they didn't have that on the 6.5 version, so you gotta do it all by hand, and that was a pretty painstaking process. So this really makes it really nice. Having the inlay toolpath makes it pretty simple and easy. So that's how you do an inlay clock. This inlay works for anything. If you want to do a sign, plaque, something, it doesn't have to be for a clock. So there you have it. Thanks for watching.